Commander Elias Ward never planned to become a legend. In fact, most days, he could barely keep his rust-colored starfighter running. Humanity's alliance with the Draken, towering scaled warriors born of fire and aerospace superiority, was fragile at best. The Draken looked down on humans, soft skin, frail bones, lacking wings and natural weaponry. Yet humans had something the Draken couldn't replicate: stubbornness. Elias had enough stubbornness to fuel a cruiser. The border patrol route he flew that morning was the same he always flew: silent, lonely, marked with the occasional pirate signal. His ship's alarms blared unexpectedly, ripping him from daydreams. A distress beacon pulsed weakly from the nearby nebula known as the Cinder Veil, a place notorious for plasma storms that could tear a battleship apart like paper. Protocol said report the signal and move on. But Elias? He punched the thrusters and dove straight into hell. Static crackled through the cockpit as lightning-like plasma licked at his hull. He could barely see anything except blazing clouds and sensor interference. Finally, he managed to stabilize near a drifting vessel, small, scorched, and barely holding air. The markings stunned him: Draken Royal Nursery Transport. That meant infants, dragon-kind hatchlings on board. A royal ship had no business being here. Something had gone terribly wrong. Docking was a manual, terrifying challenge. Elias forced the ships to connect and pushed through the airlock, blaster ready. The inside smelled of burnt circuitry and fear. Through flickering lights, he found the crew. Only 3 adult Draken, charred remains still smoldering in their armor. Pirates must have attacked, leaving them to drift into the storm. His chest tightened at the sight. Even though they thought humans weak, they had been allies. But then he heard it: soft, startled chirps. He followed the sound into the nursery pod. A single hatchling lay tangled under debris, violet scales dulled with ash, wings pinned and broken. Its eyes huge with instinctual terror. It puffed a weak flame at him, defensive, afraid. Elias holstered his weapon and knelt slowly. "Easy, little one. I'm here to help," he whispered, knowing it didn't understand human standard. When he freed it and cradled it against his chest, the hatchling whimpered and tucked its snout under his chin. Its tiny heartbeat fluttered like a trapped bird. The ship shuddered. Another plasma strike. Elias sprinted back toward his fighter. The storm was worsening, ripping chunks off the nursery vessel. Time had run out. He slammed into the pilot's seat, strapping the hatchling into his lap, shielding it with his flight armor. He ignited engines to full burn. The storm fought him in every direction. Alarms blared. Hull integrity dropped dangerously. A moment came where he could have saved himself by ejecting and abandoning the child. He didn't. Instead, Elias screamed at the engines, at the storm, at the universe itself to just let him make it. And somehow, the universe listened. His fighter erupted from the cinder veil, trailing smoke, one engine coughing sparks. He barely managed to land at the nearest military hangar. When medics rushed in, the hatchling refused to release him, clinging to his flight suit and hissing at anyone who dared approach. Elias stroked its head, whispering nonsense until it finally allowed treatment. That moment was recorded by multiple cameras and spread across the Alliance faster than wildfire. Humans had saved a Draken royal infant. Within days, the Draken High Brood arrived at the human fleet headquarters, a sight so grand the skies darkened with wings. Their scales gleamed like molten metal, and each one radiated enough heat to melt steel. At their center stood the Draken Queen, towering and fearsome. Yet her eyes showed unmistakable gratitude. The hatchling, now splinted and bandaged, was carried forward and immediately scrambled from the attendant's grip, flapping clumsily to Elias, climbing up his arm to perch on his shoulder. The Queen watched with a slow exhale of smoke. "You risked your life for one too small to defend himself," she said, voice echoing like thunder. "Among Draken, this act is sacred. Hatchlings are the fire of our future." Elias swallowed and nodded awkwardly. "Anyone decent would have done the same." "No," the Queen corrected. "Many would have left him to die. But you flew into the storm. Tradition demanded a life debt be honored." But the Queen did more than honor tradition. She issued a decree. The hatchling, Prince Azrix, would be raised seeing humans not as fragile inferiors, but as kin. And for protecting royal blood, humanity would receive an unprecedented gift: military guardianship. An entire Draken battalion was assigned to serve under Elias Ward's command. Other humans gaped as towering dragons knelt to a lone pilot. Draken commanders snarled in protest. Why obey a human? Elias looked at them with humble bewilderment. I'm no commander, he tried to argue. But the Queen's word was firebound law. Prince Azrix grew quickly. In weeks he was walking. In months he was flying short distances. And wherever Elias went, Azrix followed like a scaled shadow. The young dragon adored him, headbutting his hands for attention, coiling his tail around Elias's leg, rumbling happy growls when praised. The dragon soldiers respected that bond. They saw the courage in the human who had carried royal blood through fire. War eventually came. A ruthless machine fleet known as the Shroud invaded the border sectors. Their cold logic saw biological life as inefficient waste. With frightening precision, they cut through colony defenses. Humanity braced for extinction. Elias didn't wait. He led his hybrid squadron, human pilots astride winged draken in radiant battle armor. The sky burned with antimatter fire and dragon flame interwoven like a deadly storm. Elias guided Azrix through the Shroud battlecruiser's shields, the hatchling, now a teenage flyer, blasting molten fury into mechanical hearts. The dragons roared war songs older than stars. The enemy fell in shrieking fragments. That day, the universe learned a truth. Humans do not abandon their own, and they choose who becomes their own. After the final Shroud flagship erupted in a superheated blast, Azrix hovered beside Elias, wings scorched but eyes bright with victory. The Draken Queen transmitted a message across all channels, her voice triumphant. Let it be known. The human who braved the storm now commands the skies. Any who threaten humanity will face not a race alone, but a dragon army bound by honor. Elias stared at the stars. No longer alone, no longer underestimated. He reached out and rested a hand on Azrix's warm scales. You ready to go home? He asked. Azrix's response rippled through the air in a fierce, loyal roar. A new legend was written, not about strength of scales or fire, but the courage of one fragile human heart that refused to let a child die.